Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you tonight. We've been coming on for over 25 years now, coming up on our 26th anniversary. But tonight's guests are our own Honey Bee, who has been a volunteer on our TV show and a local activist here in Oregon, and another activist back in New Jersey, Lefty Grimes. We're going to talk about how they're going to celebrate and try to establish a national medical marijuana patients day for July 10th. And this year, July 10th is on a Sunday. And so we'll be talking about that. And we have a long hip news segment for you tonight. It's been a few weeks since we've had a new show, so lots happened. So stay tuned for that. As we always do, bring out our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first story tonight is out of Rhode Island. Earlier this week, on May 25th, Rhode Island Democratic Governor Dan McGee signed legislation into law legalizing the personal use and licensed retail sale of marijuana to those aged 21 years or older. Provisions in the law permitting adults to possess and home cultivate marijuana took effect upon signing. Rhode Island now joins a growing list of states that have prioritized common sense and justice over the status quo of a failed and nonsensical prohibition. The approval of legalization in Rhode Island is just the latest sign that an overwhelming majority of Americans want marijuana to be legalized and that their lawmakers are becoming more responsive to this growing public sentiment. The overwhelming support for this bill exhibited by lawmakers and the expeditious nature with which it was signed into law is indicative of a strong level of public support that exists in favor of legalization not only in Rhode Island, but also nationwide. This new law will work to rectify past wrongs while moving Rhode Island forward toward a brighter and more prosperous future. The Rhode Island Cannabis Act allows adult Rhode Islanders aged 21 and up to possess up to 1 ounce in public or up to 10 ounces at home. Home cultivate up to 6 plants, no more than 3 flowering plants at a time, and purchase limited amounts of cannabis. It also facilitates the automatic review and expungement of past criminal records. Under the measure, records must be vacated no later than July 1st, 2024. The Act also includes provisions for reinvesting tax revenue from cannabis sales into those communities that were previously most harmed by prohibition, as well as programs to aid social equity applicants seeking to enter the market. The law provides for 33 cannabis retail facilities to operate in Rhode Island. The state's existing medical cannabis providers will be able to apply for licenses to sell cannabis products to adults. It's anticipated that some of those dispensaries may begin providing marijuana to the adult use market as soon as this December. It will be a bright Christmas. Rhode Island is the 19th state to legalize marijuana for adults. Voters in several additional states, including South Dakota, Maryland, and Missouri, will decide on the issue in November. For the second consecutive election, voters in South Dakota will decide on a ballot measure to legalize marijuana use by those aged 21 and older. Representatives from the group South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws said that the Secretary of State had confirmed that advocates had secured the necessary number of signatures to place the measure on this November's ballot. Their director, Matthew Citrich, said, quote, "We're very pleased that we qualified for the ballot. We are extremely thankful to everyone who signed our petitions, our volunteers, our staff, and our supporters. We look forward to being on the ballot in November, and we're confident we can win again and restore the will of the people in South Dakota," end quote. Initiating Measure 27 permits adults to possess up to 1 ounce, home cultivate up to 3 mature plants, and or transfer without remuneration limited quantities of cannabis. The measure does not seek to establish a regulatory framework governing the licensed production and retail sale of marijuana. The advocates limited the scope of the measure after a previous, more comprehensive measure was struck down by South Dakota Supreme Court. In November 2020, the majority of South Dakota voters decided in favor of separate citizen initiatives measures and a constitutional amendment legalizing the adult use, possession, and licensed retail sale of cannabis. However, shortly following the vote, South Dakota's Republican Governor Kristi Noem facilitated litigation seeking to strike down the law as unconstitutional. Justices on the South Dakota Supreme Court eventually ruled 4-1 that the amendment violated the single subject requirement in the South Dakota Constitution. So the South Dakota Supreme Court said that possession of marijuana is separate from the sale of marijuana and that that's not a single subject. Every other state says that's a single subject. But, the Republicans control South Dakota. The South Dakota House approved bill seeking to legalize the adult use marijuana market in South Dakota was defeated in the Senate in February. It's a testament to the grassroots support that exists in favor of legalization in South Dakota that advocates were successful in their effort to once again place the legalization question before voters. Most South Dakotans, like most voters elsewhere, oppose the notion of criminalizing adults simply for the possession and use of cannabis, and we're confident that they will once again make their voices heard at the ballot box. Voters in several additional states, including Maryland and Missouri, will also decide on the issue in November. Additional information on this campaign is available for South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws. Just look that up, South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws. Out of Washington, D.C., only 2 in 10 Americans support federal criminalization of marijuana, according to nationwide polling compiled by YouGov.com. Pollsters asked respondents whether cannabis use ought to be either legalized nationally, left up to the states, or banned nationally. 45% of those surveyed said that it should be legalized nationwide. 21% of the respondents said the decision to legalize should be left up to the states. Only 20% of those surveyed said they supported maintaining federal cannabis prohibition. Democrats were far more likely than Republicans to support a policy of nationwide legalization. Several pieces of legislation, including the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act, and the State Reform Act, are pending in Congress. They've both been passed by the House, haven't yet been taken up by the Senate. They would both repeal federal marijuana prohibition, thereby permitting state governments to decide their own cannabis policies free from undue federal interference. We could say you can't make this stuff up, but Fox News sure can. Fox host Laura Ingraham knows exactly where the blame lies for the Uvalde Elementary School massacre and other shootings. It's marijuana, she says. It's reefer madness, Laura claims. That's right, folks. It's none other than that old marijuana psychosis that Harry Anslinger talked about back in the 1930s, otherwise known as reefer madness. Ingram complained on Tuesday night that not enough people were talking about what she claims is, quote, the pot psychosis violent behavior connection, end quote. Well, they are talking about it because it doesn't exist. The reason for that, she claims, is because Big Pot is perpetuating, quote, a pro-marijuana bias, end quote, in the media. It's so powerful because billions are on the line with it nationwide, Ingram says. And her unbiased expert guest, well, he sells marijuana piss tests. Laura's unbiased guest, some bloviating clown called Dr. Russell Kammer, is in the business of selling piss tests to employers. Kammer intoned to the wide-eyed audience of Fox zombies, quote, it's very scary what's going to happen. We've just seen the beginning. If marijuana is legalized at the federal level, we predict there will be at least 7,000 additional traffic fatalities a year, end quote. Despite repeated studies showing that lower traffic fatalities occur where marijuana has been legalized. Earlier this week, the Virginia Assembly voted to approve the budget bill, which contains language to recriminalize personal possession of over 4 ounces of marijuana in public. The language, which creates 2 new misdemeanors, will take effect immediately, with Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's signing of the budget, as he says he will do. Currently, the personal possession in public of more than 1 ounce and up to 1 pound of marijuana by adults 21 and older is subject to no more than a $25 civil penalty. On the governor's signature, personal possession in public of over 4 ounces and less than a pound will be a Class 3 misdemeanor, making it punishable by a $500 fine. Second or subsequent offenses will be a Class 2 misdemeanors, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Rather than creating additional ways to criminalize Virginians for personal possession of cannabis, the Virginia General Assembly would be better serve its constituents by establishing a legal adult use marijuana market and ensuring that all cannabis products are sold in Virginia that are accurately labeled and regulated for consumer safety. During the April veto season, Governor Youngkin's attempted recriminalization activities involving the possession of 2 ounces of marijuana by adults via the enactment of the amendment to SB 591. That effort failed, with the Senate for Virginia refusing to advance the amendment. During the 2022 Virginia General Assembly, Republican members of the House General Laws Subcommittee halted any further advancement of Senate-backed legislation, SB 391, that sought to initiate retail marijuana sales to adults beginning in September. Out of Washington, D.C., legal marijuana states generate more revenue from retail cannabis sales than they did from alcohol sales, according to data provided by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. According to their analysis, legal states in 2021 collected an estimated 20% more in taxes from retail marijuana sales than from the sale of alcohol products. In California, cannabis excise taxes brought in more than double the revenue of alcohol-related taxes. This is regardless of the fact that alcohol causes much more damage to our society and many more deaths. In Colorado, cannabis tax revenues totaled 7 times that of alcohol. The study's authors concluded, quote, "It's remarkable that in a span of just a few years, the narrow sin taxes that states created to apply to cannabis purchases have managed to surpass the comparable taxes that have long applied to alcohol," end quote. According to a separate analysis provided earlier this year by the Marijuana Policy Project, tax revenues derived from the licensed retail sales of state legal adult use cannabis products grew by more than 30% between 2020 and 2021, totaling over $3.7 billion last year. Okay, our next story tonight is from Delaware. Delaware's Democratic Governor John Carney's vetoed legislation, House Bill 371, that sought to eliminate penalties for the possession of up to 1 ounce of cannabis by adults. His decision was not altogether unexpected, as the Delaware governor's long expressed opposition to legalizing marijuana. He wrote in his veto message, quote, "I've been clear about my position since before I took office. I do not believe that promoting or expanding the use of recreational marijuana is in the best interest of the state of Delaware, especially our young people," end quote. The bill did not in any way amend existing laws with respect to the possession or use of marijuana by young people. State law defines marijuana possession by juveniles as a civil violation, punishable by counseling in lieu of a monetary fine. The measure would have eliminated civil penalties for those aged 21 or older who possess up to 1 ounce of cannabis. Continuing to define cannabis as contraband in Delaware is not in the public's interest. It's vital that the legislature push to back and override Delaware Governor Carney's veto. Nationwide, retail cannabis sales are associated with decreases in the use of alcohol, cigarettes, and pain medications by young people, according to data published in the Journal for Adolescent Health. Researchers with the University of Washington assessed trends in alcohol, nicotine, and non-prescribed pain reliever use among a cohort of over 12,500 young adults ages 18 to 25 in Washington state following the adult use cannabis legalization. They reported, quote, "Contrary to concerns about spillover effects, implementation of legalized non-medical cannabis coincided with decreases in alcohol and cigarette use and pain reliever misuse," end quote. Researchers did find that the prevalence of past month e-cigarette use increased post-legalization. The authors concluded, quote, "Our findings add to evidence that the legalization of non-medical cannabis has not led to increases in the use of alcohol, cigarettes, or non-prescribed opioids," end quote. This study, Trends in Alcohol, Cigarette, E-cigarette, and Non-prescribed Pain Reliever Use Among Young Adults in Washington State after legalization of non-medical cannabis, is available online at the website of the Journal for Adolescent Health. Out of Roseville, California, neither the detection of THC in blood nor in breath is correlated with impairment of performance or a recency of cannabis exposure, according to data published in the journal Nature Scientific Reports. Scientists quantified THC levels in the blood and in the breath of regular cannabis consumers prior to smoking and thereafter. The researchers also assessed the duration of subjects' impairment following inhalation. Consistent with other studies, the investigators reported that a majority of subjects possessed residual levels of THC in their blood at levels of 5 nanograms per milliliter or higher at baseline. The authors acknowledged that THC was present in these subjects' blood despite, quote, the absence of any impairment, end quote. Following the subject's inhalation of cannabis, the authors identified an inverse relationship between THC blood levels and impairment of performance, a finding that's also consistent with prior research. The authors wrote, quote, these findings provide further evidence that single measurements of specific delta-9 THC blood concentration do not correlate with impairment, and that the use of per se legal limits for delta-9 THC is not scientifically justifiable at the present time, end quote. We've long advocated against the imposition of THC blood thresholds as predicators of impairment and per se traffic safety limits, in particular because they are not consistently correlated with changes in the subject's performance. This is what they passed up in Washington State. Alternatively, we advocate for the expanded use of performance-based tests. About a dozen U.S. states have incorporated either per se or zero tolerance per se standards into their traffic safety laws. The study's authors also identified the residual presence of THC in the breath of subjects at baseline, absent any signs of impairment. They determined, quote, our findings are consistent with others who've shown that delta-9 THC can be detected in breath up to several days since last use. Because the leading technologies for breath-based testing for recent cannabis use rely solely on the detection of delta-9 THC, this could potentially result in false positive test outcomes due to the presence of delta-9 THC in breath outside of the impairment window. The authors concluded, quote, we present further evidence that single measurements of delta-9 THC in blood cannot establish impairment, and that single measurements of delta-9 in exhaled breath likewise do not correlate with impairment, end quote. This study, Indeterminacy of Cannabis Impairment and delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol levels in blood and breath, appears in this month's edition of Nature Scientific Reports. Okay, our last story tonight is from Riverside, California, where THCF Medical Clinic used to have an office, but it's talking about the topical application of cannabinoids. The topical application of an ointment containing 20% CBD eliminated a cancerous lesion in a 64-year-old woman with a history of squamous cell carcinomas, according to a case report published in the journal Cancerous. Researchers affiliated with University of California at Riverside and UC Davis summarized their findings. They wrote, quote, a woman with multiple biopsy-confirmed cutaneous squamous cell carcinomas presented with new red plaque on her left hand. Biopsies revealed lichen simplex chronicus. However, she self-initiated treatment with topical cannabinoid oil twice daily, and the lesion completely resolved within 4 weeks. Several prior biopsy-confirmed squamous cell carcinomas on her hands also completely regressed after similar treatment with topical cannabinoid oil, end quote. Squamous cell carcinoma is the second most common form of skin cancer. The authors concluded, quote, both malignant cancer and chronic dermatitis completely resolved within 4 weeks of twice daily treatment. We attribute the clearance of her skin tumor to the cannabidiol. Therefore, the possibility of treating non-melanoma skin cancer, such as squamous cell carcinoma, with topical cannabinoids warrants further investigation, end quote. Numerous preclinical studies, as well as a limited number of case reports, document cannabinoids' ability to act as an anti-tumor agent. The topical application of cannabinoids has shown benefit in the treatment of a variety of skin-related conditions, including psoriasis, erythema, pruritus, and acne. It's also been associated with wound healing in patients with refractory leg ulcers and with the rare skin blistering disease epidermolysis bullosa. The full text of the case report, cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma and lichen simplex chronicus successfully treated with topical cannabinoid oil, a case report and summary of cannabinoids in dermatology, appears in this month's edition of Cancerous. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. If you or a loved one are looking for a doctor to help you get your local medical marijuana permit, then call our office. We're the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation. You can call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. We've helped over 250,000 medical marijuana patients. our interview with Lefty Grimes in New Jersey and Honeybee, a local activist, talking about establishing a new national medical marijuana patients day comes up next. And so stay tuned and remember, help us restore hemp. Good night. Well, I would like to introduce Lefty Grimes. Lefty, you're in New Jersey, right?
Yes, sir.
And
New Jersey.
And our friend, longtime associate, occasional crew person, common sense, Honeybee. Welcome to the show, Honeybee.
Hi.
And so, Lefty, you've begun organizing a National Patients Day coming up for July 10th. And Honeybee, you're working to coordinate that at the Oregon State Capitol.
Yes, it's going to be great.
What states are you trying to coordinate this in?
Well, right now we're coast to coast, which is great. We're going from the New Jersey State House to the Oregon State House, which is great. We also have Alaska, and we're trying to get Hawaii, and a few other states, California, Colorado, Kansas, Delaware, and we're working on a few more. What we're trying to do is create an awareness day for patients, because 420 is generally the stoner's holiday. Okay, fine, let's keep it that way. 710 should be about the patients, about the people that were kind of passed over here in New Jersey. Once they legalized cannabis for recreational use, patients seem to have been just forgotten about. And we don't want that to happen here in New Jersey. And I think it's happening in other states too. So we want to talk to other people in other states to find out what their issues are in their states, and like what your issues are out in Oregon. What do you need in Oregon? Like in Jersey, we need home grow. We need insurance coverage. We need more products, edibles. We don't have anything like that. So I would probably ask you guys, what do you need in Oregon? You seem to have a great program there, but I'm sure there's needs that you guys have too. Certainly. You want to address that, Honeybee?
Well, one of the big things that I want to address is co-pay prices for medical cannabis. We need to cut down the prices so our patients can afford the medicine that they need to live. We're having people die because they cannot afford their money, their medicine.
Yeah.
So
Charging
how many people have to die before we change that?
The oil, the full extract cannabis oil, also known as Rick Simpson oil, is incredibly expensive. And a patient who has cancer needs to take 60 grams over a 60-day period as quickly as possible, or 90 days at the most. And that's very expensive for patients. And then just to join our program here in Oregon, we still have it intact, but the state fee is $200. Unless you have the Oregon Health Plan, the food stamps or SNAP, or you're a veteran, or you have supplemental security income, the annual fee you have to pay every year is $200. And then you have to get your doctor to fill out the paperwork, and that often costs an extra amount of money. So it's very prohibitive. In New Jersey, Lefty, how much does it cost for a patient to get a state medical marijuana permit?
Well, it cost me back in 2013. It cost me $1,600. I had to wait a year. I had to wait a year to get my card from the time I started my doctor's relationship. It took me a year. So $1,600 and a year, because it was $400 a visit, and I had to see her 4 times a year. So and the ounces of weed, $500 an ounce. And didn't you say last week that you had ounces in Oregon for $17 an ounce?
Down the street from my office here in Portland, we're selling ounces for $19 an ounce. I'll pop that up here on the show. I think it's vertically integrated. I think it's last year's harvest. Still, I didn't go buy any, but I know someone who did, and they said they had 4 different kinds available for $19 an ounce, and one of them was pretty good. So our friend John at Oregon Green Free, I think, told me that. He went and checked it out. I think, Honeybee, you know who John Young at Oregon Green Free is.
Yeah. And how much does it cost to even grow that? I mean, are they even making any money?
It all depends on how they're doing it. I mean, if you're inside,
Uh-huh.
that's not very much. But if you're going it outside in big fields, that's still pretty darn good money. I think a lot of these dispensaries, particularly this one, are vertically integrated. So they're growing their own crop, they're selling their own crop, they're trimming their own crop. And here in Oregon, it's very much overregulated. The whole what they call the metric process of tracking your plants and tagging your plants and reporting your plants and reporting your purchases is just overly onerous. For instance, if you were my patient, honeybee, and I had grown an ounce of marijuana I wanted to give to you, I would first have to file a report saying I'm going to take this ounce of marijuana to
Mhm.
you. And then I would have to say what roads I will take and what time of day I will take them. Then I have to file again saying I am leaving with cannabis. Then I have to file again saying I have now delivered the cannabis. And if I miss any of those reporting, and that's just one tiny example, if I miss any of these overly onerous, absolutely, worthless, non productive, it serves no purpose. I guess the purpose would be to keep it out of the black market. Well, this does absolutely nothing to keep marijuana out of the black market. It's just a waste of time. Most growers have to hire someone just to do this metric system. And in Oregon, the only businesses that are really making money are the dispensaries because they're able to buy it for $1 to $3 or $400 a pound. Then they're able to sell it for $1 or $2 or $300 an ounce. And so I know one dispensary owner that told me he makes a 400% markup. Usually retail is 100% markup, you know. So the regulations are completely out of line for what's being regulated.
Right.
THC is not harmful to anyone, and it's never killed anyone. In fact, when a mother starts to lactate before the breast milk starts flowing, this colostrum starts flowing, and
Mhm.
that's endogenous THC. And that's the medium by which the mother passes the immune system to the baby, is along with this endogenous.
That's amazing.
Do we lose? There you go.
But THC is not harmful. It's overly regulated, and it's one of the most beneficial substances made. So we don't need these onerous overregulation.
Mhm.
And it's stopping the hemp industry from reaching its full potential. When a hemp grower grows a crop and it goes from
Mhm.
0.3% or less than 1/3 of 1% to 0.4%, now their crop has to be destroyed. And that's a tragedy for a farmer to have to destroy their hard uh,
Right, right.
grown crop.
Devastating.
And there's no reason for it. In fact, high THC cannabis makes more and better seed, like 4 times more seed and twice as much fiber. And so as long as we have these onerous restrictions on THC, hemp will never reach its full potential.
In New Jersey, the dispensaries have cameras that go right to the state police that they monitor everything. Do you have that in Oregon also?
Yeah, you have to back up your cameras for 90 days and have them available for inspection. They don't go directly to the state. They do that in Colorado. The
Mhm.
cameras go directly
Oh,
to the state. But here in Oregon, the grower, the dispensary, the producer or the distributor, they have to have cameras at every location and keep every camera backed up for 90 days. And if they don't, they are fined heavily.
Do they do that with liquor stores? I
No.
don't think so.
And the other thing is, if you're growing grapes for wine, you don't get licensed to grow grapes. You don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to be able to grow grapes and make wine. It's only when you start selling wine that it's actually regulated, you know. So, and wine and alcohol are much worse than cannabis, you know.
oh, for sure. Does the liquor commission run yours, Lefty? Who runs your cannabis?
The Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Right. It used to be the Department of Health, but now we have the Cannabis Regulatory Commission.
They're not in charge of the alcohol as well, right?
No.
Do you
So,
still
each
permit?
state has their own issues for sure.
Who controls yours?
It's the Liquor and Cannabis Bureau. It's the same in Washington State as well.
Okay. What about tobacco? Is
In
tobacco
Oregon,
included?
we're fed the Drug Policy Alliances initiative, which I think is similar to New Jersey. They called the shots, raised the money, bought the politicians. They pushed us out of the way. We put an initiative on the ballot in 2012, and then they pretty much pushed us out of the way and then attacked us economically. That's another story.
Well, we have a protest every month at Senator Scutari's office here in New Jersey. He's holding up the home grow for patients. Patient in New Jersey, a patient will go to jail for 5 years for growing cannabis. They're going to send a cancer patient to jail for 5 years. But a 20-year-old kid can grow weed for a dispensary for profit. That's okay. But the cancer patient goes to jail. So we have a huge disconnect. So we have a nonprofit. It's called Sativa Cross. We go around to council meetings when they ban medical cannabis in these towns. They actually ban it. We go to that town, and a lot of times we would sing a song to these towns. We have an 8-foot guitar playing bong named Bongholio. He's purple. And he gets up with his guitar and he plays a song. It's called "You Can't Get No Weed Here, You Can't Get No Weed Here," and we name all the towns in this song that you can't get weed in. And it's hilarious. It's Barnegat, Berkeley, Bridgeton, Bridgewater, Brigantine, Falstaff, Adams, Clifton, Granbury, East. It just goes on and on.
It's a playoff. I've been everywhere. Johnny Cash song. I can hear
you. So. We're trying to make it our own original.
That's fun.
Well, you can't get no weed here. 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 Keep your cancer home, dear. You can't get no weed. Barnegat, Berkeley, Bridgeton, Bridgewater, Brigantine, Falstaff, Adams, Clifton, Granbury, East Rutherford, Elmwood Park, Emerson, Fairview, Freehold, Garfield, Hasbrook Heights, Hawthorne, Loveland, Lower Eye, Jamesburg, Ashland, Mawa. You can't get no weed here. 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 Keep your cancer home, dear. You can't get no weed. Manfield, Manson, Point Pleasant Beach, Elton, Colwell, Oakland, Oceanport, Ridgewood, Greenwood, Seaside Heights, Seagirt, Shrewsbury, Ski, Circuit City, Spotswood, Upper Freehold, on the Saddle River Wall. And well, you can't get no weed here. 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 Keep your cancer home, dear. You can't get no weed. We come from West Coast, well, West Long Branch, Westwood, White Hook, Woodcliff Lake. Palisades Park, Palisades Park, Palisades Park, Palisades Park. There's a wheelchair access in Palisades Park. Oh no, you can't get no weed here. 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 Keep your wheelchairs home, dear. You can't get no weed. Chester, Franklin Lakes, Harding, Midland Park, Mansfield, Old Bridge, Old Japan, Ramsey, Denville, Avalon, Parsippany, Pleasantville, Saddlebrook, Brick, and Union City. You can't get no weed here. 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 Keep your cancer home, dear. You can't get no weed.
Okay, so
we actually we do wheelchair access. Our 501c3 does a lot of wheelchair access work. So this year we stuck Bongholio in a wheelchair, and to see this 8-foot bong condensed into like a wheelchair, I can't believe he even gets in this thing. So he gets in this wheelchair, and we play our song, "The Step Is a Wall," and it's what's great about this. It really means a lot because this wheelchair belonged to our friend Jeff Oakes. This wheelchair, and his wife gave us this wheelchair to use for our activism. And Jeff Oakes was actually the president of our 501c3 for a while before he passed away. And he had stage 4 cancer. And he would go to these town council meetings with us, fighting for patients' rights. And sometimes he'd have a chemo bag strapped in his hip. He would go after liver resection. He'd be fighting. He didn't let cancer win. He actually, the way he fought, he beat cancer mentally. Maybe not physically, but mentally and spiritually, and to make awareness and inspire others. Yeah, he beat cancer, and very inspiring to see what Jeff did. And so we have gone around with this wheelchair and created a lot of awareness with it around Bayonne. You'll see a lot of steps. You'll see police stations with no wheelchair access in New Jersey. I don't know how your wheelchair access is out there, but something that happened when I became a medical cannabis patient activist is because I saw what my friends are going through and what myself goes through when I was in the wheelchair. Sometimes I needed a wheelchair to get around, and I'm like, boy, I'd hate to be in a wheelchair full time because you can't get into police stations, you can't get into pharmacies, you can't get into a lot of places. In Delaware, I think there's a couple of dispensaries you can't get into. Maybe in Oregon, there might be a dispensary or two on the second floor that I'm sure you've seen it. That's not access. Is that true?
Oh, of course. Yeah, there have been
that's true.
the first marijuana clubs. You'd have to go down in a basement, so people
Right.
in wheelchairs had to have people carry them up and down the stairs. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah, I remember that. World
that.
Famous Cannabis Cafe.
Right.
So, Paul, I'm sure you've seen it because you told me. I'm amazed. You inspired me because you said you helped 270,000 patients. Now, I can imagine how many of those patients are in wheelchairs and what their struggles and stories are. I mean, you could tell me stories.
We have many. In our TV crew, we have had a number of patients who are in wheelchair. I'm sure Honeybee knows our mutual friend Eric Llewellyn very well, and there have been others in the past
Yeah.
who have been wheelchair bound who've helped us, man camera.
Right.
But anyway, but yeah, we've helped lots and lots of people, and still do, that are paraplegic or quadriplegic, or have a number of other neurospastic disorders that make them unable to walk for some reason.
Well, how do you help them? Because here in New Jersey, we just started. My friend Jason made a FICO how to make FICO video, and it's amazing because he uses dry ice to bubble the whole process, which is great. It churns the water, and then he uses an alcohol extractor at the end to recycle an alcohol still to recycle the alcohol. So it's a really great system. And
That's what I use an alcohol. I don't have dry ice or anything but heat to evaporate the alcohol, and I wash the flowers for 3 minutes twice. Then I throw the flowers away and just extract the alcohol. I think we recapture about 80% of the alcohol, which is good. It's a lot better than none. And so it's much needed. I think probably over the lifetime of our garden, I started growing medical cannabis in 1999, and it was illegal to sell it until 2016. And so I gave away free marijuana in a number of big gardens. And because of my clinic size, I could afford to have a big indoor garden and a big outdoor garden that supported each other. And over that 20-year period of time, I've grown and given away over 7,000 pounds of free marijuana. I'm sure Honeybee has a lot of knowledge of that over the years. And
Volunteered with you a lot throughout all the years.
25 pounds of RSO, something like that. Maybe more. That's conservative.
And that's why oil is our day for patients, because patients need RSO oil. It's anointing oil in the Bible. It's actually, there's a recipe in the Bible for anointing oil that calls for, I believe it's a pound of hash. They call it calamus. They call it cannabosum, and they've translated it to a couple of things. It could be calamus, which it's not that. Could be a sugar cane. Not that either. It's cannabis, because they used to use it for clothing. They used it for a lot of things back in the day.
Yeah, we've had Chris on this show Chris Bennett talking about his books about that. And in fact, that's part of my presentation when I go overseas. My most popular presentation is the evolution of cannabis, the first 25,000 years. So of course I talk about it being the holy anointing oil, and Moses went up to the top of the hill to talk to the burning bush. Buddha was enlightened under a Bodhi tree eating one hemp seed a day. And the Japanese just coronated a new emperor in 2019, and they had a sacred hemp harvest by a family that's been growing hemp for 1,350 years for the imperial family. And so they have to hemp fabric for the rice ceremony, and hemp rice is the most sacred plants in Shinto. And in China, even deeper. I went to school in China for a couple of years and imported hemp paper and fabric from China starting in 1988 as a business until 97. And so I talk about Chinese culture as well.
Oh, that's so very cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
You have a lot to offer, and it's amazing what you can do, and very excited to be working all together to get this done.
Yeah.
International community, it was Tim Leary I first heard say there are more marijuana smokers than there are Jews, Christians, and Muslims combined. We're the largest spiritual group on this planet. And if you go back, we have co-evolved with cannabis for 25,000 years. And we've changed cannabis and it's changed us. And we need desperately, now that we have the knowledge, to put it to use to save what's left of the environment. So, but it's not only medicine for people, but it's medicine for the planet. But in this case, how can people get in contact with you and find out more? First with you, Lefty, and then with you, Honeybee, and find out. I know, Honeybee, you're going to be going to the Oregon State Capitol.
I am.
Lefty, you're going to be going to the New Jersey Capitol. If someone in another state is interested in getting involved, who do they contact?
Yes, you can go to our, we're going to put an event page up on sativacross.org. That's our 501c3's page. And we'll have information up there, how to join the Zoom call, how to tune in on Facebook. And we're going to have information on there. We're just putting this together now, our list of people. And Paul, we're so happy to have you because, we can do so much, just me and you right now, just helping people.
Right.
And creating awareness.
Come out there today. I'm an ambassador for cannabis. I'll be happy to come out there. I've been going to events for a long, long time. I won't brag about myself anymore right now.
No, you don't have to. We know. We need patients to have their own day, and that's important because 7/10 is going to turn into a stoner holiday if we don't make it a patient holiday. And
right.
Patients have to come first. We have to put the last first. We have to leave the 99 to go back to the one, and that's what this is all about. 7/10 day to help the people that are hurting. Be helpful, not hurtful. And you've seen it. You've seen the suffering that I've seen. And if you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And you have to do something about it. And that's what we're trying to do and create this awareness for this day and to help people, help cannabis patients, because cannabis helps so many different ailments and diseases. So you'll see people in wheelchairs. You'll see people not in wheelchairs with canes. You'll see people that look healthy, but they're actually dying. You'll see a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. You'll see rich people, poor people, doctors, you'll see a lot. And it's pretty amazing and inspiring what I've seen doing this activism, and Honeybee can attest to that.
Right.
Top plans here in Oregon, and I know we're still in the process of making them, but let's talk.
So you can follow me at Sativa Cross West. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that you can Google Sativa Cross West, or my personal page, Honeybee Thomas. We are also going to create a web page as well, but you can find that all through sativacross.org, because that's going to be our main site, our main point of contact for every state, so it's all in one place.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on that tonight. Actually, I'm glad we did this call because now it puts a fire under my ass.
Right.
This show
So
on Friday night at 8 o'clock our time, 11 o'clock there in New Jersey. And we stream it, in addition to being on cable TV here, it streams on facebook.com/restorehemp. We have about 620,000 followers on that one. That's our biggest one. And it'll
that's
also
great.
youtube.com/cannabis common sense. We don't have nearly as many people watching that, but a small but loyal following. It's really the best way to archive it. Go back and see.
Right.
Yeah.
This will be archived out there as long as YouTube will let us keep it on there.
Right. So
So
we're going to have a rally at the Portland State House, and bring your signs and your support. Bring your needs of what you think
this
we should have.
July 10th,
Yes, July 10th. It's a Sunday.
Sunday.
So
Okay.
it should be a good day to go. Not very many people there, but I mean, we'll bring in the people, and we'll bring in the attention, and the awareness to what we're trying to do.
What time do you think you want to meet there?
11:11.
11:11.
Our
so,
time, yeah.
Junction with
Pacific Standard Time.
you back in New Jersey. Lefty, 11:11 will be what, like 2:11 there in New Jersey?
Yeah, can we do it earlier in Oregon? Because it's going to be 11:11 in Jersey.
Oh, that's
so
true. We can. 8:11.
Well, that's a little early, but
on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. Go to church first, and then go.
Oh wow, then that's like 2.
10:11. No, how about 10:11 or 10:10? 10:10 in Oregon.
Okay.
We'll figure out a time, and it's going to be great, and we'll pass out information to everybody. So we'll get it on your list of dates and times, and we're going to let everyone know, because we need to create awareness for our patients.
Yeah, and we will.
My son, this is dear to my heart, because my son had epilepsy, and he was dependent on cannabis, and he couldn't afford it on his own. So, my son could have been here longer if he could afford it longer. So this is very special to me, and I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. So I'm here to help other patients.
You lost your son to epilepsy?
I did in 2015.
He had a grand mal seizure a number of times that eventually
did. He just hit his head one too many times. The complications. He was 27.
I see. Much too young for certain.
Way too young.
My condolences.
So I want to help other families with education, with copay prices, with so many more other things. But the affordability is the one that I really am close to my heart about, and want to just reach as many families as I can, and everyone I can, to create this awareness. And we'll find out more things as people let us know. We're going to be like, oh, well, we didn't know that, or this is going to bring out a whole nother ball game with people, because we don't know all the patients, and how many times do they get asked, what's your opinion about the laws? What would you change? What do you need? And a lot of them are sick at home, and they can't get out, and the people that can be there need to be the voice for not ourselves, but just all the patients. So I just really encourage everyone to go out and support this, because a lot of people are suffering, when we could change the law by making people aware of the need of the changes. So thank you so much for what everyone is doing. Thank you.
Are you allowed to smoke in public in Oregon?
No.
No, you're not. Did you know in the city of Madison, Wisconsin, it's legal for anyone to smoke marijuana anywhere where it's legal to smoke tobacco? It is now in Madison, Wisconsin, even though it's not legal in Wisconsin overall. They don't even have medical marijuana in Wisconsin. In Madison, Wisconsin, it's legal to smoke marijuana on the street.
Did not know
Interesting.
that. Yeah, Jersey too.
Yeah, anywhere
Okay.
in Jersey that you can
I
smoke a cigarette.
In California, the legislature passed a bill to make it illegal to smoke in a county or a state park. And Governor Jerry Brown vetoed it, saying it's a God-given right to smoke marijuana on the beach. And I sent the bill back to
That's
him.
good.
It
That
is
is great.
marijuana in a state park. So don't do it. Don't get caught in a national park. Yeah.
No, you don't even possess it in a national park.
Yeah.
You can't possess it in a. I went to the Thomas Edison memorial thing over here, and it's a federal park. I actually had weed on me, and they're like, you can get arrested for that. I haven't.
They're like,
'Cause me. I'm like that camera. Like, hey, can I smoke weed here? Like, no, you can't even possess weed here. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll be going now. Because I used to do police stations. I used to go around to all the police stations in New Jersey and ask them, where do you smoke weed? Because the cops didn't know we had a medical cannabis law. And the cops said, oh, we're going to arrest you. I'm like, no. I spent $1,600 for a card. I had to wait a year. And now you're going to tell me you're going to arrest me for every? No. So I started going to each police station in New Jersey and creating awareness for that one. And that worked out pretty good. I actually became friends with quite a few cops, which I never thought I would happen because I've been beat up by cops twice in my life. If anyone has a bias towards police, it should be me. But I actually made a lot of good friends with a lot of cool cops in the last 2 years. So, yeah, it's been a great journey.
If you don't know Lefty, you're not from Jersey.
It's been a crazy journey, man. I never thought I'd be where I'm at right now. But I'm glad that we're actually working together to do this, and this is going to be huge and very helpful.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So it's sativacross.com. Is that the right website?
No, sativacross.org.
.org.
We're 501c3. Yeah, we're 501c3, and
okay.
I'll have a flyer for you. Put the flyer up now. And put the flyer up. And
we'll send that stuff over as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'll send it right over.
So, what about you, Lefty? How did you come to find out that medical marijuana helps for you, and what got you motivated to get active?
I met Cheryl Miller many years ago. Cheryl Miller.
Cheryl and Jim, I think we talked about that briefly, but Cheryl passed away from multiple sclerosis. I think it's probably been a dozen or 15 years ago now. But I know Jim is still active, and they were leaders in terms. They were one of the first patients to get federal medical marijuana as well.
No, they weren't able to get the federal, but Jim pushed his wife across the state in a gurney in a bed to create awareness for this issue, and she actually got arrested a couple of times doing this. And I didn't really know about medical cannabis until I met Cheryl. I knew that cannabis helps cancer patients by giving them the munchies. Sure, it gives me the munchies. Sure, why wouldn't it give you the munchies? And that's all I thought it was. Then I met Cheryl, and I saw how Jim would give her the cannabis and how rigid she would be beforehand. And then when he gave her the cannabis, she was able to move her arms, and he was able to exercise her arms and stretch her and help her. And I didn't know anything about that, and that it piqued my interest. I'm like, well, what else does cannabis help? So seeing what Cheryl went through inspired me, so that when I hurt myself at work, I actually fell and I broke my back. I started my O405, and I had to go for surgery. And I was on opiates for 10 years. I had been on opiates for my fusion. I have an artificial disc, fusion L4L5, L5S1, 2-level cervical, and for years they had me on opiates. 90 milligrams of roxicodone every 3 hours.
Wow, that killed me.
That's an insane amount of drugs.
Killed me.
So it took me a long time to get off that, because first of all, I'm dealing with pain. On top of the drugs, I have the pain to deal with. So when I'm withdrawing off these drugs, not only am I getting the withdrawal pains, which was in my arms, sweat, and all that horrible back pain. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. It took me, the first time I failed, I was in the third day of cold turkey. I was in the fetal position on the floor of my room, And I thought I was going to give up. I'm like, I can't do this. So a couple of months later, I tried again. I was like, all right, I'm going to try it again. I titrated down from 90 to 45 to 30. I just kept titrating down. And I hit a wall at 4 milligrams. So every time I hit 4 milligrams, I would go cold turkey. And I tried the second time. 3 days on the floor, I'm in the fetal position. I couldn't do it. It took me 4 times to get off those opiates. 4 times.
Try using the fetal oil to help you.
I should have made it easier on myself. No, I bought a bag of sour diesel, and somehow that worked for me. But now, knowing what I know now, when I had this surgery, I took oil. I would have used FECO. I would have used suppositories. For this surgery here, this 2-level cervical, I actually used cannabis suppositories, FECO suppositories, and took 0 opiates. I was very nervous about this surgery because I'm like, I was off opiates for years by then. And I'm like, I don't want to go back on opiates. And I thought I would have to go back on opiates after the surgery, but no. I used cannabis suppositories. It worked. It absolutely worked. I couldn't believe it worked, but it worked. And by the grace of God, I'm off all those opiates. I'm using only cannabis. So if you have an addiction issue to opiates or heroin, our 501c3 has people that will try, and myself, that will try to help you. Because if I can get off opiates with the pain that I'm in, believe me, anybody can. You just have to have your mindset to go through it. And it was not easy. It was not easy at all.
I have a collection of antique medical marijuana bottles from Park Davis, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, and some of them from Park Davis say it's for habituates of opiates, chloroform, cocaine, and to help people with delirium tremens getting off alcohol. So it's been known in ancient texts to be an exit drug from other much more harmful drugs for thousands of years. And so, like I said, it's right there on the bottles from Park Davis and Eli Lilly from 120 years ago.
Yeah, amazing. They knew back then what it did, how great it was. But
the only way they made it was by renaming it and calling it marijuana to play on the racist build up here in America, the racist attitudes that have been prevalent since the founding and going back to prehistoric times, really. But it's things are changing, and we should probably wrap up right now. I want to thank Lefty Grimes and Honeybee. Lefty, you're in New Jersey. Honeybee, you're here in Oregon. We're talking about organizing a medical marijuana patients day on July 10th,
Yes.
which has been, like you said, kind of picked up as a stoner thing, and you want to reclaim it as a medical marijuana patients day because oil definitely helps patients. So it's sativacross.org and Sativa Cross West on Facebook and Instagram. Is that right?
Yes, Sativa Cross West. Yes.
Anything you want to say in closing?
Just please come and help us, change. And I don't know.
As we get closer.
You can cut that out.
Coming on and keep working to restore hemp tonight.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you. Thank you, honey.